Okay, good morning. Let's start the Sicha. It is Parshas Ve'era, Chelek Tes Zayin, Sicha Hey. And if you have a chance, you can take a look at the chart that I made. So to start with Aleph, B'nogea Lamakos, Shehevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Mitzrayim,
I'm
Matzino
sorry.
Plukta.
I'm sorry for interrupting a moment. Am
Sure.
I the only one? Am I the only one having a problem printing the paper?
I
The
think
chart?
that if you're having trouble that somehow the chart needs to be made into a PDF, if somebody's able to do that and repost a PDF would be great. Some people were able to print it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. You can definitely follow the Sicha without the chart. The chart was just a little extra. B'nogea lamako shevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu al Mitzrayim matzinu plukta bein Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Akiva. So with regard to the plagues that Hashem brought on the Egyptians, there's an argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer omer kol maka hayita shel arba makais. Rabbi Akiva omer shel chamesh makais. So you might be familiar with this from the Haggadah. Rabbi Eliezer says that every makkah was multiplied by 4, as if it was like a four times the strength. And Rabbi Akiva says that it was actually multiplied by 5. Mahu techen shtei hadaos shel arba v'chamesh. So what's the meaning of the difference between, was it 4 times the strength or 5 times the strength? Not the strength, excuse me. Like each makkah was 4 or each makkah was 5, which I put that on the chart. Mevur al kach b'kilvo b'shem Baal Hamalamed shapluktaschi. So it's explained by someone referred to as Baal Hamalamed that the argument, what's the argument really about? Ladas Rabbi Eliezer, hamakos chadru b'kol arba hayesodos shel kol davar. That according to Rabbi Eliezer, who says that each makkah was like 4 plagues, that it permeated all four aspects of every single object, meaning everything is made up of the 4 elements. We have earth, sun, water, air, and everything we have, every object, so the blood, for example, in the first makkah, is made up of different components. So deeper than like what you're experiencing as an object, as a composite, the makkah got permeated a level deeper to the ingredients, so to speak, to the makeup of the matter. And with regard to the 4 elements. We're not going to talk about water, but if you want just an easy way to think about it, water is H2O. So it got into the hydrogen and the oxygen, so to speak, as opposed to just the composite, which is what we call water. Kelomar hamaka lo pagav davar rakafi shehu morkav kvar mikol arba yasaidas. So that's to say, the makkah, the plague, didn't just interact with the thing the way we know it, the way it's comprised in our world. Ela higia be'omek yoter, but it went deeper. Gam be'etzem shel kol echad mehayasodes shadavar. It went into the essence of the 4 components of the 4 elements of the actual thing. V'lachen kol makkah hayita shel arba. And therefore, every makkah was 4. V'ledugma, the makkah dam, for example, the makkah of blood, lo huku rak hamayim kifi shehem nirim kimitziu shel mayim. It didn't just engage or permeate the liquid as it's like a liquid, gam ha'esh haruach v'ha'efer she'b'mayim, but it also permeated the fire, the wind, and the dust within water. So I don't ask you to fully explain exactly what that means, but I think we can, I mean, I hope that's understandable. It got to a deeper level of what a physical object was made up of. This is all according to Rabbi Eliezer, but now let's switch over to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva mechadesh yoter mizeh. So Rabbi Akiva went even deeper. He made even a more novel idea. Shehamaka pagab gam bechomer hayelui, that the makkah, it engaged even deeper than the 4 components that comprise everything, the 4 elements. It went to something called chomer hayelui. So later in the Sicha, the Rebbe is going to define that or relate or connect that to the concept of yechida, the essence, like deeper than a level deeper than the contraction. So if every object in this world comes down into this world through what we call Seder Histalshalos through a way of contractions, that there's the godly light, and then it contracts and contracts and contracts until it finally looks like a pencil. But there's a level beyond those contractions. There's one level deeper. And with regard to our soul, we call it the Yechida Shebenefesh, a much essential place that's beyond what we're comprised of. Again, these are Kabbalistic ideas that are a little hard to articulate, especially for myself. And in the English translation that Project Likutei Sichos put up, they translate Chomer HaYilui as Chomer HaYilui. So that wasn't so helpful. But it's the initial state of materiality, a state before contraction. So Rabbi Akiva has that level additional. That's why he says that every makkah was 5. Shel hadavar shehu pashut mufshat miyutzer arba hayasoidus. And this is a level that's more simple, more contained than the level of the object once it's already can be divided up, or once it's already comprised of the 4 elements. The nimsa shekol makkah heta shel chamesh. Therefore, every plague was like 5, the arba hayasoidus, the 4 elements, the gam bechomer hayilui, as well as this deep essential state called chomer hayilui. Kavanat hamakos hayta kishaman lahakot v'lishbor et Mitzrayim. So what was the purpose of the makos? Well, it's exactly as their name. They're a plague. The point was to destroy and to break and to hit Mitzrayim, Egypt. V'mizem muvam benoge le'inyan hanal chadiras hamakos bedvarim hamukim. And this is related to what we're just talking about. How deeply did the plague penetrate the objects, the physical things that were impacted by the plague? How deeply did the plague penetrate? So if you look at the chart, we have Rabbi Eliezer the 4 and Rabbi Akiva the 5. Kavanas hamakos haita kishimam. I just read that. Lefi shtei hadaisos lo haita hamaka rak begilui. So according to both opinions, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, the makkah was not just as we experience it on a revealed level, bedavar kifi shehu nira v'nikar, something that's obvious and seen. Elagam behelam. No matter which opinion you take, the plague also permeated a hidden level. Hadaos hanal im haya gam bechomer hahilui or rak bechomer kefisha yeshlo kvar tzior. So both opinions, whether or not you're going to take Rabbi Akiva that it went to the chomer hahilui, the deep, deep essential nature, or Rabbi Eliezer that it permeated the 4 elements, the makeup of them. Talus b'shiur shabo nega v'chadar tumas mitzrayim b'davar. They're dependent on how deeply did it impact Egypt. V'behatam l'shir zeh ba hamakos kedei levatel tuma. And how deeply did it come in order to nullify the impurity of Mitzrayim? So depending on how deeply the impurity of Egypt was experienced or was felt or was permeated, was permeated into the world, that's how deeply the plague had to come to counteract it. So was the impurity of Mitzrayim on the level of Rabbi Eliezer, that it impacted the 4 elements that comprise the world, or was it even deeper than that the impurity of Egypt impacted the 4 elements and also went to a deeper essential level? And depending on how intense the impurity was, is whether or not the plague was multiplied by 4 or multiplied by 5. Okay, I'm up to Seif Gimel, on the 2nd page. Ha'inyan hanal, masha tumas Mitzrayim higia at etzem etzios hadvarim, v'haplukta hanal. So this idea of whether the impurity of Egypt went to the essence of the matter and the argument above, so this is not just a philosophical conversation. This is a conversation, a discussion, a distinction that we can see also in halacha, in the revealed aspects of Torah. And we're going to analyze the halachic prohibition of chametz, of leavened bread, on Passover, in order to understand this on that level. Iser, so this is the next part of the chart that says prohibition of chametz. Iser hachametz ena rak be'achila v'hana elagam b'kol yira v'kol yimsa. So there are three parts of the prohibition of chametz. There's eating, there's benefit, and there's ownership. And as a result from this comes another mitzvah of biur chametz, otherwise known as, we refer to it in English as burning of the chametz, but I purposely use the Hebrew word on the third part of the chart, biur chametz. We're going to get to that after. Shaychoso shel achila v'asura el hadavar hanachal hu hatsura shalo hayinu kafish hadavar nechal mitziur b'tziur gamor. So when we talk about eating, it's not abstract and it's connected to a piece of bread, the form of it. Hagoram lo lios la'achila v'lo es hachomer kafishu b'fnei atzmo. And it's not directed at a deeper level of the bread. It's not the matter as it was before it became bread. It's just the form of the bread. El etzem hametzius shel davar hamachal. We're not talking about the essence. We're talking about just the form of the object. Ve'ilu hana mehadavar v'sira kashur gam la'etzem hadavar. But when we talk about benefiting, we do go a little bit deeper. But when we're talking just about eating, we're talking about the physical form of the object. V'zehu achad habi'urim lekal shechol davar lios asur bechila v'mutar behana. D'lechora im yesh b'davar rak v'iser echutar leniach midavar asur. So we're separating eating and benefit because there is a possibility that you're allowed to benefit from something, but you're not allowed to eat it. And this is why, because eating is physical, it's external, it's not abstract, whereas the benefit could be a little bit more abstract. And then the Rebbe asks a question, how is it possible that something could be kind of like partly forbidden? You're not allowed to eat it, but you are allowed to benefit from it. So not brought in the Sikha, but I'll just say as a side point to make it a little more, at least the way it made sense to me. If you have like a slaughterhouse and they take a cow and they slaughter it, and it turns out that the cow is treif, is not a kosher cow, the slaughterhouse actually is allowed to benefit from that. They're allowed to sell it to a non-Jewish market. So you're not allowed to eat it, but you are allowed to benefit. So there is such a thing, that there's this difference between the eating and the benefit. And I did put this into the chart. Ela habir b'zehu kanal isar achila perush shehara nimtza rak b'tsuros hadavar v'chitzonia. So we're going to analyze what does it mean to be, what is eating. It's connected to the external aspects of the thing, the form, that which makes it that we can eat it. So with something that would be allowed to be eaten, you certainly would be allowed to benefit from it because there's nothing usur about it at all. Amnam kevan shagam hakesher shel hana ve'isura el hadavar hu al yedei hashimush bo hanasa dafka kasher chomer hu b'tsura misuyemet hareza gufa hochacha shekesher zeh el hadavar hu kafi sheyesh lo kvar tzior. So with regard to benefit, there's actually two aspects of benefit. It is more abstract. That benefit is connected to how we use it, like eating it. And it's in a specific form. Okay, and this is connected to the form that it's in. But when it comes to chametz, not just plain non-kosher, there's an additional iser, which is that we can't own it. היינו שאיסר חדר לחומר, בעצם הדבר כפי שהוא מופשע מאיזה צורה שתהיה. And it doesn't matter the form that it's in, it can't be owned at all. ולכן עצם המציאות של חמץ פשוטו ימצא אסורה. And therefore that if any chametz is found in your possession, it's forbidden. It's not, doesn't matter how you use it or the form that it's in, but rather it's completely and totally forbidden to own it. So which reminded me of a story that actually becomes more relevant as we go a little bit deeper. We'll talk about the biur chametz. I'll share it just really briefly. It's a story from memoirs that is also printed in Talks and Tales. There are two Hasidim, and I think that the point of the story in its original form is just to bring out the beauty of a simple Jew or a working Jew. And they own a brewery that brews beer, which is completely chametz. And each one thinks that the other one sold the chametz. And lo and behold, Passover comes, it's already Passover, and they find out that neither one of them actually sold the chametz. And they're both completely and totally distraught, and they're besides themselves, and they don't know what to do, and they run to the Rav, who runs to the Dayan, and they beg him for an answer of how to do tshuva, and he says to relinquish all ownership of it. Seeing the distress of the two simple but pious men, the Dayan strove to assure them that they carried out all the decisions of the rabbinical court. Their guilt would not be as grave as they thought, nor the penalty as severe as they believed they merited. The beer which was contained in the barrels at their brewery outside of the town should be poured out, and no one should have any benefit therein. And all vessages and barley used for the beer making should be locked away until after Yontif, then the matter would be considered further. So they're given this psak of how to, it sounds like, curtail their ownership of it in the best way possible. And they're very, very distressed, and they don't actually feel good about this. And they go to sleep that night, and one of them wakes up early to like red neon flames, and he realizes the brewery went up in flames, and he's so excited. And the whole town thinks that these Hasidim are going to be distressed because they lost all their parnassas, all their livelihood, all their money, their entire business just went up in flames. But they're actually dancing and so excited that their deep, deep tshuva was accepted. So I think it's a beautiful story, but you see that the ownership goes even deeper. Like here, they're given exactly how to get rid of it and what to do and to let the beer flow out and the vessel should be put away, but they still have a connection to it. So until Hashem, so to speak, they take it that accepts their tshuva and causes this fire, they still feel connected. It's not just about the usage. It's not just about the actual product because they let it out. They let out the beer from the barrels, but it's about a deeper connection to it. And as we talk about the biur chametz and the burning, I think that the story actually continues to relate. So now let's move to Daled, to the biur chametz. The mitzvahs biur chametz matzino ploksa. In the mitzvah itself of burning your chametz, there is an argument, because that's the way we like to do things, discussion. Then Rabbi Yehuda lechachamim. Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda omer, ein biur chametz elas spreifa. The Chachamim omrim af mifarer v'zor l'ruach or matil l'mayim. So Rabbi Yehuda says the only way that one can destroy the chametz is through burning. And the Chachamim say that it can actually be put in water in the ocean, or it can be crumbled and sort of blown in the wind. And if you ever remember a Passover that fell out on a Motzei Shabbos, meaning Shabbos was Erev Pesach, we take the the chametz crumbs, or the challah crumbs, and certain families, at least this is what my family did, is we put them in the toilet. So that's really relying on this opinion that you could do the destroying of the chametz with putting it in the toilet. With water, sorry, the ocean. Doesn't say toilet in the sources. And I guess just a visual, a mashal that maybe many people are familiar with, people say, like, if you want to make up for speaking Lashon Hara about people, there's a story, the man, he goes to the top of the highest building and he takes his pillow filled with down, filled with feather, and he lets the feathers fly out. And then he's told, go collect those feathers, and it's impossible. And it's sort of a mashal to the impact that a person could have if they speak badly about a person. But again, the fact that it's impossible, I think, is the image that I wanted to bring out, that the Chachamim say that's one way you could deal with the chametz, just kind of like throw it to the wind, crumble it. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says you must burn it. That's why I didn't translate biur chametz as burning the chametz, but rather kept the Hebrew word. The Haragachover Maspir as Tam Haploksa. So the Ragachover is now going to explain to us what's this argument really about, these two modalities of getting rid of our chametz. L'das Rabbi Yehuda yesh lahashbit et etzem hametziu shel chametz. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to destroy the essence of the chametz. The memela tzaricha adam l'sorfo, and therefore you must burn it to really, really destroy it, essentially. But if you just kind of spread it out in the wind, still there's the essence of the chametz exists. That's why I thought that story with the feather pillow kind of brought out the same point, that there's still concepts of it there in the world. But on the other hand, the chachamim, the rabbis say that it's actually good enough to destroy the form of the chametz, meaning it would be okay to just disperse it in the wind. Because it destroyed the possibility for a person to eat or to profit from the chametz in any way. And this will happen if a person disperses it into the wind. So that's what made me think of that story, that you have on one level, they're given the instructions from the Dayan and how to deal with it, but they wanted to go to a deeper level. They wanted to really, really get rid of that chametz. They were so distraught that Hashem, as the story goes, Hashem made a miracle and the whole thing went up in flames. The move on Shashior hashbata gufa talui b'shayla ad kama choder iser chametz b'davar iser. Okay, so now we're going to go back to what we started about, how deeply is the impurity permeated. We had Rabbi Eliezer was 4 times and Rabbi Akiva was 5 times. So the level of destruction is dependent on how deeply the prohibition of chametz is embedded or permeated in the actual thing. So does the prohibition of chametz get down to the essence, to the deepest levels, before it's even like a matter, before like deeper than the 4 elements? So if that's the case, then the essence of the chametz needs to be nullified, needs to be destroyed. About which would be like Rabbi Akiva's approach, the 5 times, the plague getting the 4 elements and then the 5th level. But if the prohibition is connected just to the form, then it's enough to destroy the form. So the level of eating and benefiting is enough to destroy that level, because there's no you can't benefit from it or eat it if you destroy the form of it. V'yesh lomar sheshei daosos elu hen behetem l'shtei hashitos to Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Akiva be'inyan hamakos. So the Rebbe says, and one could say, that these 2 opinions are connected to the ideas of Rabbi Eliezer and the ideas of Rabbi Akiva with regard to the makos. So we're going back there. So it's like if you just take a step outside of the Sikha, like we're being given all these ideas, but it's absolutely like incredible to see what the Rebbe saw when he's learning these halachas. So let's go according to Rabbi Eliezer. The Rabbi Eliezer, which I believe is in my is in my last chart, I believe. So Rabbi Eliezer shekol maka chulo shel arba makos. So Rabbi Eliezer tells us that each one of the makos was 4. Each one of the plagues was 4. Shamakos hare rak bedavar kafi shekvar yesh bo tzior shel arba yesodis. That the plague interacts with something that has the 4, that is comprised of the 4 elements. Hem kashitas chachamim, and this goes according to the ruling of the rabbis chachamim. Af mefarer v'zorei the ruach, that you can disperse something into the wind. Sheyesh leva'er rak et metziut hachametz k'fi shehi kshura b'tor b'tzura, because you're destroying the chametz as it is in form. shel hachametz, as it is ha'efsharut la'achila v'lahana, and that negates the possibility of eating or benefiting from it. V'das Rabbi Akiva shekol maka chulo shel chamesh makos, but now according to Rabbi Akiva, that each makkah was actually 5. Shamakos hayu gam bechomer hahilui, that the makos even went to this deeper level, this essential level, before it contracts into the aspect of our world, into the 4 elements. He mishum dispirale b'shitas Rabbi Yehuda she'ein bir chametz elas reifa. So therefore, he agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that it needs to be burnt, that it needs to be completely and totally obliterated. B'dugna shtei hofanim b'biur chametz b'nogea le'etzem mitziut hachametz im haTorah aseret etzem hametzius kefi shehu mushpat mikol tzura shehi, or rak metzius kefi shekshura b'toar hayos hadavar re'ui lahana chulo matzinu shnei afanim gam be'isur hana. So now we're going to analyze 2 aspects of what actually benefit means, which I went a little backwards on the chart, went back to the second chart, the prohibition of chametz. So with regard to the 2 types of biur chametz, the destruction of the chametz, which is discussing about the essence of the chametz, of what is the essence, or how deep is the Isser connected to the essence. Does the Torah prohibit the essence of it as in existence, or rather just the form of it? So there are 2 concepts of benefit with regard to these things. Because like we said, eating isn't the least abstract. Eating is the most straightforward. So one aspect of benefit, Aleph, this is in Seif Hey, the little Aleph, that the benefit in some capacity is going to bring you to eating again. Because you sell something, you get money for it, you buy food with your money. So even if it's indirect, but it's to some capacity going to go right back to feeding myself. Reach v'tolas. You're going to make a profit from the sale. It's indirect, but you're going to make a profit, and then you're going to buy something to eat. So even if it's disconnected, it's still bringing you back to food. And the second concept of benefit, usage of it that doesn't bring about any benefit to me whatsoever. So what's an example of this? L'dugma, ha'achil davar iser l'kalve hefker, giving food that I cannot eat, forbidden food, to an ownerless animal. Asher b'zeh ein makom lamar she'anam mevi l'idei achila. The benefit, the usage that I'm getting from this isn't in any way, not the usage, sorry, the benefit that I'm getting this isn't in any way connected to eating. So there's these 2 aspects. The Yerushalmi yesh plugta, so another argument. In the Yerushalmi, we have an argument. The din ha'achelet chametz l'kalvei hefker, whether or not you're allowed to give chametz to an ownerless dog. Ownerless is important because if you own the dog, then you're for sure getting a direct benefit from it. But ownerless. L'chad ma'an da'amar hadavar mutar. So one opinion says that it's allowed. V'ladas acheret hakatuv lo yachel chametz riva v'eser gam histamshu shel ha'achelet chametz l'kal v'hefker. And another opinion says that when you're not allowed to eat it, this includes all usage of it, and this would also include giving it to an ownerless dog. So this discussion in the Yerushalmi about what to do, how are you allowed to use chametz? Can you give it to an ownerless dog? Can you not? The Rebbe says, Yesh lamar shagam plukta zo talui b'shayla hanal ad kama chadar iser chametz b'chomer ve'etzem hadavar. The Rebbe says it lines up exactly with what we're talking about. How deeply is the prohibition of chametz embedded in this chametz? How deeply is the prohibition embedded? Is it deeply that you can't eat it and you can't benefit it? Or is it so deep that you can't even have any usage of it? You can't even throw it out to the street for an ownerless dog to come get it. Im ha'eser shorel etzem hadavar rak ad kama sheyesh lo shaychas l'toar v'tzior. So if the prohibition is permeated in the essence only to the form, azay iser hana, then this is the prohibition of benefit. Mugbal rak lahanos elo sheyesh lem shaychas leiser achila. So then So then the benefit would only apply, the prohibition of benefiting from chametz would only apply in some capacity that's connected with food. Meaning it would go according to the first opinion that it's allowed. You could throw it out on the street, and if a dog gets it, he gets it. Aval im ha'isur shora al etzem hadavar kifi she'ein lo kol shachas le'tziur, the Torah v'tziur. But if the prohibition of chametz goes so deeply to the essential state of the thing, here we're talking about chametz, like beyond what it's comprised of in our world, but the essential deeper state before contraction, so to speak. Azay iser hana hu iser mitzad atzmo. So then the prohibition of benefit is the matter itself. Hakol kol ofen shel hishtamshus, and this would include any single capacity of usage of it in any way whatsoever. Even has nothing to do with consumption, with eating. I'm just throwing it on the street, and if a dog gets it, he gets it. This would be a deeper level, which I hope it's obvious how that lines up with Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva at this point. Now, Eliezer is the 4 and Akiva is the 5. So the brackets. Va'al pi zeh yesh lomar she'tam le'davar Rabbi Yosef HaGalili daso huva b'mechilta v'somach v'kodam l'shtei hadaos shel Rabbi Akiva v'Rabbi Eliezer. So now it's in brackets, so we don't get ourselves a little too confused. But there is a third opinion about the plagues that we haven't heard until now. We had Rabbi Akiva says that's 5 plagues. Rabbi Eliezer says 4, but there's also Rabbi Yossi HaGalili that's brought in the Gemara at that same time. Minayim eser makos ve'al hayam laku 50 makos v'chulei. That each makkah was 1. There were 10 makkahs, and at the sea they had 50. That's what Rabbi Yossi HaGalili says. But each makkah was 1. Hu ki l'shitas chametz mutar behana. And that's because this same Rabbi Yossi HaGalili that says each makkah was 1, he says that you're allowed to have benefit from chametz. Now, this is obviously not the way that we paskin, not the way that we follow, but that's his opinion. V'zehu mochiach kanal she'isar chametz hu rak b'toar hadavar. And he says that the prohibition of chametz is only in the form of it. V'nogei l'tumas mitzrayim harei zeh moreh shelo paga ela b'toar v'chitzonias hadvarim. And therefore, his opinion is that the impurity of Mitzrayim, it only went into the external aspects and the physical nature, the external aspects of whatever it engaged with. The memela kol maka heitarak b'mitzius hadvarim kifi shehem kvar morkav me'arba hayisedus. So he doesn't go as deep as Rabbi Eliezer, and he says that the impurity went into the object as it is after it's comprised of the 4 elements, just the object like this. Once you break it down and then you take the water, you break it into hydrogen and oxygen, that's already okay. But when it's the composite matter, just holding a pencil, that's what's impure. So now I'm up to Seif Vav on page 5. Al pi ha'amor la'ayil. So according to everything that we've discussed thus far, she'aplukta de Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Akiva taluya b'mida sheba chadar tuma mitzrayim, that the argument of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva is really all about the level of impurity in Egypt that permeated the land of Egypt, Eretz Mitzrayim, Bes Asher Ba, and everything within it. Yesh levaris tam hamidrashot hachalukos b'nei la'arba ha'gluyos. So now we're getting a little more into the Hasidic aspects, which I believe is the last chart I made, which I labeled Gullus. Once we're going to understand that what we read in the Haggadah every year, that Rabbi Eliezer says 4 and Rabbi Akiva says 5, is really talking about a much deeper concept here about how deeply the impurity permeated the land of Egypt. Now, once we have those glasses on, those lenses on, let's talk about what the Gullus is all about. The Rov HaMakaimes Ein Gullus Mitzrayim Nemanis Bein Arba HaMalchuyos VeHagluyos. In most places, the exile in Egypt is not counted amongst the four kingdoms that exiled us. V'mevur hatam al kach, and why not? The reason is ki inyan galaso shakul kikulam v'yavater mehem v'lechen lo huzkar beklalam ki hu bechinas gedolam kulam, because the exile in Egypt was greater than them all, and it can't be combined with them because it was the root of it, it was the source of it, it was the general concept of all exiles are rooted in the exile Mitzrayim. It was like the overarching thing, the overarching exile. So it's not part of it. It's kind of like the category head, I suppose. I don't know. On the other hand, however, on the other hand, it's not always listed that way. Sometimes it's listed as part of the four. And it's listed as the first one of them, the first one of the four exiles, but it's part of the four. So again, this idea, is Mitzrayim, is Egypt part of the four kingdoms that exiled us? Or is it kind of like the head exile and the others are under it? It depends on how, if we're going to go according to Rabbi Eliezer or according to Rabbi Akiva, according to the four, each plague was 4 or each plague was 5. And the Rebbe says v'yesh lamar. So it could be that these two ideas are dependent on how deeply did the impurity of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, permeate. Habir Bazet, to explain this. Hatam lakach shemitzrayim lo nimna berov hamekamos bein arba hamalchiyos. So why is Egypt not counted in most places between as part of the four kingdoms that exiled us? Malchiyos hagluyos. Hu mishum she'arba hamalchiyos galuyos ham neged dalas otios habaye. It's because the four kingships that exiled us, the four societies, are like the four letters in the name Habaye, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. The Galus Mitzrayim hu neged kotel shel Yud. However, the Galus Mitzrayim, the exile of Mitzrayim, is like the tip or the crown of the Yud. So if you ever look at letters as they're written in the Sefer Torah, the Safras letters, every letter has these little tips and crowns. Actually, this isn't even, the Rebbe does use the word crown later, but also the Yud itself has that tip, the crown of the Yud. V'alpi hayadua she'arba hayasodos hem dalid oseos havaye v'koto shel Yud keser hu dugmas ha'chaymer ha'kaidem ha'nikra ha'yilui. And this crown of the Yud, this keter, this tip of the Yud, is just like what we had on our first page, that phrase, chomer ha'yilui, this level that's before the contraction, this deep, deep essential level that's even greater, or that's even more esoteric or deeper or elevated than the way a matter is when it comes into this world, like that higher than contraction. Again, these are very Kabbalistic terms. I'm trying to wrap my brain around it and then find vocabulary. So if anyone wants to jump in with better vocabulary for these terms, that's definitely appreciated. But the Mitzrayim being that level that it's easy for me to picture like a crown, the crown above the four. And then underneath it becomes the four exiles. Nimse she'arba hagluyos hen keneged arba hayasodos v'galus Mitzrayim paga gam bechol mahar kilui. So again, that would be to say, in the vein of Rabbi Akiva, that the four exiles would be like the four elements, the fire, earth, water, air, and Egypt would be, the exile of Mitzrayim of Egypt would be above all of that, the chomer ha'kilui, the before contraction, the deeper essential state. However, there are many occasions, or there are occasions when Egypt is part of the four exiles. And thank you. And this would be to say that Egypt is on the level of Chachma. Now, if you know that the Midos, we have the Chachma is the highest level, and we have the Chachma being a das, and then the emotive Midos, but Chachma being the highest level. So Mitzrayim is like the Chachma, and everything kind of subdivides and gets rooted back in Chachma. And this is according to when Mitzrayim is when Egypt is part of the four. Va'afal pi shegam l'taso zo Mitzrayim hi shorish kol hagiluyos. So of course, even according to this idea that Egypt is part of the four exiles, it's still the source of all exiles. Harei zehu shorish hakol et kol hagiluyos, and it's the source of every exile that we've had. However, according to this opinion, the impurity of Mitzrayim, it only impacted the form of something after it was comprised of the four elements. So again, this is more according to the approach of Rabbi Eliezer, that while Mitzrayim certainly is the hardest and the most deepest exile, it's still within the realm of something that's comprised by the four elements. Someone actually just asked me on Shabbos, why didn't the Jews fight back? I explained to her in just like one sentence that it was such a deep, deep, deep exile. It was absolutely impossible. It was much more, much worse and much more difficult than the Holocaust. And people, just because it's recent history, people actually said that right after the Holocaust also. But from any learning that people do about the Holocaust, it's very obvious why the Jews didn't fight back. But it just sort of underscored that we sometimes overlook how difficult and how deep the exile in Mitzrayim was. So Zion, Inyan Hagalas v'Yetzias Mitzrayim Yeshno Gam Ba'avoda Ruchnias. So all of this philosophical talking also relates to our spiritual service. Mitzrayim hu melashan Mitzrayim v'gvulim. So this is an idea maybe some people have heard before, that Mitzrayim, the word Mitzrayim, Egypt, is connected to the word Mitzrayim and gvul, boundaries and things that hold us back. Galus Mitzrayim perusha she'avodaso shel Yehudi yesh la gvul shehi nasis b'medida v'hagbala. So when we think about what is the exile in Egypt, it means that we as Jews, we're bound, we have boundaries, we have shortcomings, we have things that hold us back. The Yetzias Mitzrayim, and what does it mean to leave Egypt, the exile from Egypt? He Yetzias ba'avoda so mikol hamedidos v'hagbalos. It's that we leave all of our bounds and everything that holds us back and everything that ties us down away from connecting to God and from living a completely connected life with Hashem. We leave that. All of the things that hold us back. And not just the things that hold back my animal soul, like my job and my need for food and all the different things, but also the things that hold back my godly soul, which is a much higher level, the things that are holding me back on a spiritual level, or that always wants to connect, but still there are things that are holding us back on so many levels. And the deeper that we can connect to the leaving of Mitzrayim, the deeper we can leave Mitzrayim. Ben Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva. So now there was tying us all back around. This is what it really means, the argument of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Im hamakos hayu rak ba'arba hayusodos, or gam b'chomer ha'hilui b'ruchnias. So this is what it's all about. Were the plagues only connected to the four elements, or to this deeper level, the chomer ha'hilui, this level of maybe the yechida? Im ha'avoda d'yetzias Mitzrayim nidreshes rak be'eser koichos hanefesh hamechlakim la'arba sugim keneged arba otiyos Shem Havayis. So now, according to Rabbi Eliezer, if the if the service of leaving Mitzrayim, the overture of leaving our exodus, is this connected to our 10 powers of the soul, the 10 midot or sfirot, which are going to be subdivided into 4 categories? This is Rabbi Eliezer's approach, which this is in the chart. How would that be subdivided? Aleph, avoda b'pol machshava, dibor v'maisa, are just our physical, regular actions, all of our thought, speech, and action. So to me, that's a very, very, very high level, but that's being listed as the lowest level. And that all of our thought, speech, and action should be, we have to have like a Yetzias Mitzrayim, so to speak, a leaving of the exile, a leaving of our boundaries in our thought, speech, and action, that we, that's all connected to godliness. And the next level that holds us back is our midos and our emotional attributes. So not just my external thought, speech, and action being my externalities, the way that I express myself, thought, is something spoken about a lot in Tanya, but yes, thought is part of my external expression. Whereas how I feel about it deep inside that I might not share with you, that's my midot. And then the next level is Gimel, is my seichel. Here is Bina, is my intellect above how I feel about it, but how I think about it. And then the fourth level, a very, very high level, is Mesiris Nefesh, is my chachma, is my self-sacrifice, is connecting to the divine, is going beyond even how I think about it. It doesn't make sense to me, but I'll do it anyway. Ladas Rabbi Eliezer, Kol Maka, Pulo Shel Arba Makos, Nidreshes Avoda Shel Yitzias Mitzrayim, Bekol Arba Suge Kaichos HaNefesh, V'yesh L'tzes Mehagbala Shel Kol Echad Mehem. So Rabbi Eliezer says that when we're doing our spiritual exodus from Egypt, we have to elevate ourselves from all four of those categories. And now the Rebbe is going to give a paragraph on each one. Ha'ovan ha'tachton beyoter hu ha'medida v'hagbala b'milchama ha'yetzer. So the first level, which I think for many, myself at least, is a very high level, is leaving the boundaries of my yetzer, of my inclination. Something that pushes me to do a forbidden action, God forbid. In action, in speech, or even in thought. And practically speaking, this might require a tremendous amount of internal war, internal fight, and to make sure that my thought, speech, and action are always aligned in the appropriate way. And that's what Yitzias Mitzrayim offers me the opportunity to align myself. The Mitzrayim, okay, but now on the level 2, Mitzrayim bedakos yoter, even on a more refined level, she'afal pisha dam nizhar betachlis mila'avod al davar isor, even though I practically, or a person practically tries really hard not to do anything forbidden, and not even ve'afilu al dikdu kal shadivrei sofrim, even a tiny little deviation from what should be hin hagaso b'nyei heter and hamatim la hanachos ha'olam. However, their behavior, the way they act with things that they're allowed to act with, the way that we eat and do all the different parts of life that are completely prohibited, is in the way of the world, so to speak, is cultural. The kol davar shosayesh tfisas makom l'shelam ma yimru habrios, and everything I do, there's a tiny little piece that says, what is the world going to think of me? What's the rest of the world going to say? And this is showing that even though our behavior is totally appropriate, we're still bound by the feelings of the world around us. We're still concerned about what others are going to think. That I feel my surroundings and I give importance and weight to it. So anyway, just going to say what's coming to my mind. I didn't think about this as I was preparing, but thinking about it as I'm teaching, and I don't want to get off track, and I know we're not supposed to editorialize, but it's hard with everything going on in Israel to sometimes wish that there was less thought put into what the rest of the world is going to think of us. Just leave it at that. So now let's get to the third level. I already graduated that. My thought, speech, and action are all appropriate. I'm not so concerned about the world's going to think of me. However, adayin la'olohu lehiyot kashur v'asar v'hegbalos mitzios hu kach avodaso nasit rak al pitam v'das v'krius sichlo. But everything has to make sense to me. Everything that I do with tam v'das. I do with logic and principle, and with the certain coldness of intellect. I'm not concerned about what the world thinks of me, but I still use my intellect as the cold intellect as my guiding light, I guess, or my guiding push. And what's the last level? The last level of a true exodus from Egypt. And again, this is all still according to Rabbi Eliezer, according to the idea that there were 4 makkos. Ladas Rabbi Eliezer. This is the avoda of self-sacrifice. The chachma, just translated as wisdom within the soul. Yitachen sheyeh ha'adam oved Hashem lamala metam v'das aval adayin b'midah v'hagbala. So it's true that on the level of self-sacrifice, we are above thought and reason, but we still have some form of boundary. To illustrate what that means, the Rebbe is going to share a story. Al derech sipor chach mori v'chami, a story of the Frierdiker Rebbe. More odos ploni shebekriya shma ha'rich be'echad. There was a man that was saying Kriya Shema, and he elongated the word echad, as we're taught to do. He's bonen be'echad ve'achar, and he really meditated on the word echad, on the oneness of God. Ve'achar kach omer shisponus nimshacha kimat daka. And afterwards, he says to the Rebbe that his meditation lasted about a minute. In Hebrew, bald eina minut. It lasted about a minute. And he legitimately he meditated on the word echad on the level of mesiras nefesh, on the level of self-sacrifice, of completely giving himself over. But even such, even in that ability and that capacity to be on such a high level, he was still aware of the time. He was still aware that a minute had elapsed. And here's another example. Or bedakos yoter, or even more simply, or more refined, or more nuanced. Adayin yesh lo hergesh shehu noheg b'mesiras nefesh. A person has the understanding, the feeling that they are acting in self-sacrifice in this moment. They still feel the self. I put that in the chart. Highest level is mesiras nefesh, still conscious of the self. And this shows that they haven't completely and totally gone out of all of the boundaries and all of the limitations of our existence. So ches, just to tie it up in a really beautiful way. So now comes Rabbi Akiva. But he says it's five plagues. We just deeply analyze what it means, the four. Now comes another level. Well, first let's back up. Rabbi Eliezer, who al Shem Elokei Avi Be'ezri. Rabbi Eliezer comes from a very, very long, beautiful lineage of tremendous Torah scholars. As it says, his name is for the God of my father, Be'ezri, will help me with help. Haya ben Horkinus. He's the son of Horkinus that Pirkei Avos talks about, that every teaching that Horkinus had from his teacher, he never lost. He retained it all like a sealed cistern. The ben Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And he is the son of Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. Hayalo ezer me'elokei avi. He had help from the gods of his father. He had this long, for lack of a better word, yichus, this very, very holy lineage. And therefore he couldn't in any capacity whatsoever fathom that anything could touch the essence of a Jew. As it says that even at the time of sin, a Jew has complete faith. That's Rabbi Eliezer. But what about Rabbi Akiva? About Rabbi Akiva haya ben Gerim. This is just so beautiful. But Rabbi Akiva was the son of converts. And therefore he would never lose sight of any other individual, someone that needs to be brought back, it says, under the wings of the Shechina, brought back into the fold. He doesn't come from this yichus. He doesn't come from this long line of tzaddikim. He doesn't come from Hashem is my help. He comes from converts. He has no Jewish lineage, and he will never lose sight of anybody. V'bedakos yoter zohi ha'avoda de machpirim yechidi avoda shel tikun etzem hanefesh. And in a more nuanced way, this is the work of total bittul, of complete rectification of the essence of the soul, of a much deeper level. So not just what I'm comprised of, but that deeper level that's before the next contraction, that's before the next permeation into the world. kseh hahofech. So this actually creates a benefit and advantage in its own way. This aspect of Rabbi Akiva, far-reaching, going even deeper than what a person is comprised of, but going to the essence, the deep, deep, deep essence. So through this, through the approach of Rabbi Akiva, the exit of Mitzrayim can have an impact on that level as well. That we can leave the boundaries and the limitations and everything that holds back, even on the deepest soul level, the deepest essential soul level. That a person can go back to the essence of the godly soul where boundary does not exist. So there's only oneness. There's no boundary whatsoever. And this is what ultimately will bring the exodus from Egypt in all the levels, until the complete and total exodus, Yitzias Mitzrayim, Mitzri Hagalus Hazeh, which will include leaving of Egypt from this galus today, Ha'acharon Begashmias, the last physical galus, Kimei Seitcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim Er'enu Niflaot. And to end with the bracha, that the day that the exodus of Egypt, we shall see, with the exit of Egypt, we shall see the miracles. That is our Sikha today.
I just want to comment on one thing. I read
Should
an
I
article.
stop the recording or?
Oh, without, you don't have to record it. No.